We have already formed a quorum. Let's call the meeting to order. We have two items today. One is about women in poverty. Next, about ways to enhance that's how we can promote social enterprises and also bazaars and so on. Let's invite the government representatives to join us.
I
welcome to the representative from the Bureau and the departments. They are here to discuss with us the issue of women in poverty. Ms. Lee, do we have to wait till Mr. Sui is here? Our first discussion item is women in poverty. We were supposed to discuss this at our last meeting, but then since we aborted our meeting last time, that's why we had to defer it until this time. And supposedly we had wanted to discuss the issue of community bazaar for 2 hours, but then as the administration did not manage to send the right persons here last time, that's why we'd like to hear from the administration as to what this response is. That's why we have two items today, and because we are not able to have 2 hours for the second item, that's why we can only have a discussion with the administration without the deputations. So the floor is now open to the administration. Please walk us through the paper. Please be precise and concise, and I'll give you 5 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Let me first talk about some statistics about women in poverty, because at the time when the paper was released, we didn't really have the statistics for 2013. That's why, given the fact that we now have the latest statistics for 2013, we will be able to give you an update. Basically, when compared to 2012, the situation was very similar in 2013, and according to the poverty statistic for 2012 and 2013, and after government's recurrent cash intervention for women living below the poverty line, in 2012 we had 541,900, and in 2013 we had about 520,700, and then for male we had 476, and then for 2013 we had 451,500. So for female poverty rate in 2012 it's 15.7, and then in 2013 it's 15%, and then for male poverty rate is 14.7 and 14% respectively. So on the whole, female poverty rate was slightly higher, but then given the fact that in 2013 both dropped somewhat, that's because we had the OALA that would also have an impact on the statistics. And for women in poverty between the age of 18 and 64, there was the following characteristics. For example, there was a lower labor force participation rate in 2012 is 27.2, and then the corresponding figure for males was 58.1%, and then for the economically active females, that went up to some 53% in 2013, probably because the employment rate was high, and also because of the sustained effect of statutory minimum wage. That's why female participation rate was somewhat higher. And for women engaged in full-time employment, the situation for women was somewhat lower than that for their male counterparts. And also, more women are homemakers, and for people living in poverty, in terms of single parents, there were more who were female. and they would account for some 84%. So from this we can see that if you look at the general picture, we can see the situation with regard to female in poverty. And in terms of government intervention, other than offering this safety net, the EXO is to encourage people to become self-reliant through employment. That's why we try to offer assistance to women so that they can get a job, and that would also help lift them out of poverty. And therefore, in terms of education and also job opportunities and also training and retraining services, so we would step up those efforts. And for measures that can facilitate women to go into the job market, for example, after-school care service and also community nanny support, and also other measures that would also help unleash the women workforce. And through some financial assistance, for example, we would like to get funding support from the Council for LIVA, that is the Low-Income Family Assistance. We hope that that would also help. In Para 7, we have also pointed out that with regard to monthly earnings for women in 2012, the median wage was 11,000, and then for men it's 14,000, and then in the third quarter of 2013, and of course that was 12,300 for women, and then 15,000 for men. And so the gap was narrowed. And also, after the implementation of SMW, we can see that it shows, or it proves to be effective in boosting female employment. And when compared to the situation before the implementation of SMW, there was an increase by some 7.4%. So it shows that SMW was able to attract more women to join the labor market. But then, on top of that, other than job services and also training and retraining services, we are continuing to step up those efforts. On the other hand, in terms of childcare services, that's also an area where we would like to step up our efforts so that women will be able to make a choice and they can take care of both their family and also their career. So in terms of childcare services, in different respects, in terms of subsidized childcare centers and also the more flexible home-based childcare service, we would continue to beef up those areas. And last month, we also enhanced our after-school care program, so that during holidays and also weekends, we would be extending the operation hours, and the fee waivers would also be introduced. And also for the partnership fund for the disadvantaged, some $200 million would be injected into the fund so that additional care can be provided to provide more after-school learning and support programs for primary and secondary school students from grassroots families. And we would also be implementing family-friendly employment practices, and we have also organized employer reward program, and more companies are joining. And this year, we have 1,800 companies joining, so that was an increase by some 60% when compared to 2011. And we have also introduced the paternity leave arrangement, and that would also help. So I'll pause here, and we'll be more than happy to listen to your comments, so that in assisting women to lift themselves out of poverty and also in assisting women to get jobs, we would like to do more. All right, all members will have 4 minutes. So 4 minutes each. I have Tan Ka Piu, Leung Chi Cheung, Fernando Cheung, KK Kwok, and Kwok Wai Keung. First, Tan Ka Piu, and then Albert Ho. Thank you, Chairman. Looking at the median wages for male and female, there was a slight narrowing of the gap. I hope that that trend can continue, but then still there is a gap, and the discrepancy is more than 20%, and therefore is still undesirable. In fact, at universities and graduate schools, we have more women students or female students, but then in the job market, the situation is the reverse. And for women, of course, they like to keep their own personal savings, But then in the job market, because women often have to give birth, that's why often the time they will have to become returning moms after their children have become older, and there is little chance that they'll be able to save up for their retirement. So very often their savings would not be able to provide them for a good retirement. That's why very often women will have to rely on their husbands, and their assets and income would also have to be counted together. And many people are actually talking about universal retirement protection schemes that also helps to address the issue of women who often have a shorter working life, because they have to become home carers and working moms. And we are talking about 15-year free education, and then for childcare services you have managed to increase the number of places from 700 to 900. Still, is far from adequate. So can you be more bold in your measures? So can you also support full day and also the extended full day kindergarten, so that you'll be able to make use of the time gap, so that when necessary the children can stay in kindergartens for longer hours, so that women will have more time to work, and then they'll be able to make more money for both their families and themselves. So that also has to do with kindergarten education.
Undersecretary, first of all, with regards to universal retirement protection, the approach adopts a multi-pronged approach, and by pegging income with different factors, the key is the government's social welfare system, and for the OALA, it's rather effective in achieving the same. Apart from social security, family support and other support services are equally important. And these other measures include support in terms of housing and healthcare assistance afforded to needy people. You can see our efforts in enhancing these services continually. The Commission on Poverty has learned from Professor Chow's reports, and that said, we still have to continue discussions on various measures. This issue is rather complicated and deep-rooted in nature, so we have to conduct further studies. And in the coming policy address, these efforts would also be outlined. Can you encourage these women in poverty to achieve economic independence? Yes, this is something we will look at. And with regards to the 15-year free education, this is something the Education Bureau has to take care of. But from a poverty alleviation or childcare point of view, are you going to hold discussions with the Education Bureau? Yes. From our point of view, enhancing childcare services and after-school care services is an important part of our policy. So we'll do our best to enhance our work under different circumstances. Mr. Leung Chi-Chang. The issue of women in poverty is largely due to inadequate income or the inadequate use of employability. I understand that the government has some subsidies such as CSSA and other subventions, but from women's point of view, the key is for them to achieve self-reliance. So my opinion is that the government should should do more to help women become employed. Rather than giving them CSSA, it's better to train them to work. And the DAB has given its views on before. And we propose subsidy for whole day infant education. A lot of the kindergartens operate on half-day basis. Of course, if we have to ask these kindergartens to change to a whole-day mode, it would create constraints for them. But this is something the government should review later on. And for infants between 0 to 12 months of age, we don't have a lot of infant care centers. These are very, very scarce in many districts of Hong Kong, and the parents have to scour the entire Hong Kong to find places for their children. I'm sure the government is aware of this problem, but yet they have not done anything. So can we have a bureau or department in charge of this issue and increase the demand or supply as necessary? And for Tin Sao Hui, some people are saying that it has not been successful. But from our point of view, it's still better than nothing. Because this kind of open bazaar allows people to run their own businesses. At the beginning, these open bazaars face a lot of problems, but now the situation is a bit better for them. And so can the government consider expanding this program to the 17 other districts? Is this something you will consider? Undersecretary, please. With regards to childcare services, yes, I do agree with your point. This is something we are continuing to enhance. We have increased the number of service places from 680 to 730 in the second half of 2014 to 2015, and we will also step up other aspects of childcare services. We will enhance support for these childcare services, and we'll do our best to enhance our services in different areas. Mr. Leung mentioned the open bazaars. In fact, this morning I was in Tin Shui Wai and I saw that I think we are going to cover this in depth on the next item of our agenda, so I won't go into details. But the point is, if we are to identify appropriate sites for bazaars, we have to assess the unique situations of different districts. Mr. Fernando Cheng, when you look at the income distribution between men and women, most low-income persons were women. In our part-time employment pool, most of them are women. So if we are to review statutory minimum wage, this review to $4,118 is imminent and necessary. If we want to release the employability of our women, it's important to step up childcare services. Right now, the services provided are extremely inadequate, according to a report by HKCSS before Christmas last year. And the number of service places for children under 2 years of age was only 100 or so, and we have so many children who need these services, but yet we only have around 600 or so service places, and for kids between 3 and 6, for whole day and half day kindergartens. But places at whole day kindergartens are scarce, and the subvention provided by the government is still based on half-day kindergartens, so we don't have resources to operate more whole-day kindergartens. For after-school care services, we only have 5,000 or so places in all of Hong Kong, and even after increasing the number of places, we only have 1,660, and we only have 5,000 or so service places in Hong Kong, which is completely inadequate. You have to increase that number tenfold. Is the government committed to enhancing its work in after-school care services or childcare services? Are you going to increase the number of service places in kindergartens and whole-day kindergartens? And after-school care services should be attached to schools in order to bring convenience to parents. I don't think employers would allow the parents to take leave all the time. So can the government do more on this front? And the Secretary, yes, I agree with Mr. Cheung's comments. In terms of stepping up after-school care and childcare services, there is work to be done. So that's why, as I mentioned, we have increased the number of places in standalone childcare centers from 690 to 730. And in terms of auxiliary services, we have increased the age limit from 6 to 9. And we have introduced at least 234 additional places for home-based childcare services. So we would continue to step up our work in different areas in terms of after-school care services. As mentioned in last year's policy address, the Education Bureau would conduct studies on the integration of these education services. As I mentioned, in stepping up these services, we have extended the service hours during weekends and at nighttime, and we have also increased the number of service places by at least 300. And for parents with long working hours or for those who need to work at during weekends, it would be easier for them. Mr. Kokaki. Well, the situation is not as rosy as the papers suggest. When you look at the median income for and employment rate for women, these figures are rather low when compared with men. I agree with the members' comments on the childcare services, but in terms of policy, when we, as far as maternity leave is concerned, we have 10 weeks total at the moment. This is rather inadequate in encouraging women to work. Some young women had to resign or sacrifice their earning abilities in order to raise their kids. So my question is, does the government have any plans to increase the number of days for maternity leave so that working women can take care of their infants or babies at the same time? And for the social nanny scheme, this is something which has come under criticism. I think the government is discriminating against some people in our community because you are not providing enough training for them, and their hourly wage is even lower than the minimum wage. And the government should add value to this scheme, for example, by providing more training to employees under the qualifications framework. And since the qualification framework is already in place, you should give them more satisfactory wage in order to help them build confidence. And we can also foster a neighborhood spirits through this program, and we shouldn't encourage employers to exploit their low wages. For children between 0 to 3 or 3 to 6, do you have a clear timetable in place to illustrate when we will finally have enough service places in Hong Kong. Every time you are saying that you are going to increase the number of places, but this situation has persisted for a long, long time, Undersecretary. And for childcare services, we will review our overall strategy and approach. And our approach is to constantly enhance childcare services. And for maternity leave, maybe the colleagues at LWB will address this issue. Please be concise since we don't have a lot of time. Thank you, Chairman. For maternity leave, according to the employment ordinance, we have to give 10 weeks. Apart from these 10 weeks, if working women have specific needs, the length of the maternity leave can be extended by 4 more weeks. In Hong Kong, the salary during the maternity leave is completely borne by the employers. So when we review this policy, we have to see whether the community is agreeable on any changes.
On the independent childcare center as proposed by Dr. Kwok for infants from 0 to 3 years. In fact, we have 690 in total. But then if you look at childcare centers attached to kindergartens, actually we're talking about some 24,000. And of course we understand that for independent childcare centers, well, so that would be for permanent. But then for the others, they would have to close by 4 to 5, and therefore we will have to look at the extended service in the future, and then we will have to look at them as a whole to see how we can further improve the services. You also refer to the neighborhood service. So we are talking about some informal services, that is the home-based childcare service, in order to enhance the neighborhoodliness amongst people living in the same neighborhood. So that is the neighborhood support childcare project. So in fact, for these community nannies, they are not really working as they're not taking this as their full-time jobs, but then apart from taking care of their own children, if they're able to take care of their needy neighbors within the same community, then at different time slots they can also take care of those children. And of course, the suggestion made by the member just now, we have heard from time to time different comments and suggestions, and for us, we would also talk to the service providers and also the community nannies. We will be looking at the service as a whole as to how we can improve this form of childcare service. So can they provide us with a timeline as to when they'll be able to offer sufficient childcare support for the community? So when will you be able to do that? If you look at the service provided by childcare centers for infants below 2 or 3 years old, and together with the kindergarten from childcare centers, in fact, the utilization rate is about 80%. In other words, at the kindergartens and also childcare centers, in fact, there is still spare capacity. There are still places available. The reason why there is spare capacity while there are people out there and groups who have been telling us that there is shortfall in the services and they have to wait for a long time before they can get the service. We will look into that. Can you clarify the figure? Just now you said that you have some 54,000 places, but then if you look at para 17 and 18, for independent childcare centers, actually you are increasing that from 720 to some 954, and then for ASCP that will increase to 5,400. So what figures are you talking about when you refer to the figure of 54,000? So I'm referring to the independent childcare centers. But then for childcare services, there are different types. We have childcare services and also kindergartens come childcare centers. Because for the kindergarten come childcare centers, the childcare centers are affiliated or subsumed under the kindergartens. So what about the figure? Increasing that from 700, increasing that to 730. So that is a far cry from 54,000 as you referred to just now. We're referring to the extended full day service that's supported or subvented by the SWD, because in 2005 we conducted a review and we worked with the Education Bureau and we decided that there should be a division of labor. In other words, 54,000 should be the right figure for all the services calculated together. Yes, Mr. Kwok Wai Kang. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Tan Ka Pio hit on the nail of the issue. Well, for women working, of course, that's one thing. But then what about women not working? And if they have never worked, then they will not have accumulated any retirement benefits. So what is going to happen to them when they retire? Well, when they apply for support or welfare, they will have to pass the means test together with their spouse, and women would stand to lose, because if you have savings, well, the savings will be in the account of her husband. And also, very often women have to take care of their families, and for home carers, they are not paid. So this is an unpaid job. And you might think that this is wishful thinking. But then for the working spouse, should he be made responsible for making contribution to the MPF system so that their wives would be entitled to retirement benefit, or should they be required to pay their wives if their wives have to stay home to take care of the family? So just think about it. And then for women who have to work when their children are still very young, that would be kind of difficult, because number one, they would be worried, and number two, there is a shortfall in childcare service. All right, let's say if the child has grown up somewhat by the time when he or she reaches 8 or 10, all right, the mom might want to rejoin the labor market. So are there enough places in the retraining programs? And the situation that they are facing is that, all right, their son or their kid might have grown up 8 to 9 years old now, but then despite the fact that they do not require whole day caring, they would still have to attend after school extracurricular activities or interest or hobby classes and so on. But then for home care services and also beauty services and also skincare services and so on, that might be more popular with women, because for these jobs very often women will only be required to go to work during weekends and holidays. So how can they be rest assured that their kids would be properly taken care of? You also talk about this award program for employers who introduce family-friendly employment practices. All right, you have introduced that for some time, and still you are just running this as an incentive program. So to what extent would that be able to protect the women? So you will have to try your luck. All right, you might be able to hit or you might be able to be employed by an employer who is family friendly. So in terms of holiday or vacation arrangement and so on, you also talk about compassionate leave and also special casual leave and so on. Well, all these will have to be publicized so that more employers are willing to offer such leave to their employees, or else this would just end up in a talk shop, or this would just be empty talk without being implemented very extensively in the community. So how are you able to ensure that you can indeed make sure that employers are family friendly? All right, for career women who do not have proper retirement protection, of course we need to look into that, and family support is a very important factor. But then how we can better protect women, in particular for the home carers? So how are we able to safeguard their retirement life? Well, in our future discussion, in particular when we discuss our retirement protection package for the entire community, we would have a chance to discuss that. And also for the employment ordinance, as we know, in Hong Kong, we do have different employers, whether they are large consortiums or small employers, because of their different mode of operation. It's hard to come up with a hard and fast rule as to what they should be doing. Whatever we can, we always try to ensure that this would be incorporated in the employment ordinance where there is a consensus fostered between employers and employees. But then given the different mode of operation for different companies, we can only offer this as incentives so that employers can have sufficient flexibility in doing this. As to family-friendly measures, I'll ask my colleague to supplement on this. Well, as far as the Labour Department is concerned in promoting family-friendly employment practices through different channels, we've been doing this. For example, we have publications, and we also organize seminars and also exhibitions and also APIs and newspaper advertisements and so on. We even advertise that on public transport on public transport modes. So for good employers, we will produce episodes to showcase what they do with their employees so as to publicize this within the community. Mr. Lee Chuk-yen? Well, I haven't heard anything concrete. So nothing concrete is about how we can really lift people or women out of poverty. So apparently what you suggested just now didn't work at all. None of those measures seem to have worked. In particular, as we all know, for women in poverty, one of the main reasons is if they're able to work, then they would have a better chance of lifting themselves out of poverty. That's why the core issue is, why are these women not able to come out to work? In particular, if you look at the poor population, the labor participation rate is 27.2%. It's very low, but then for the corresponding figure for males, it's 58.1%. In other words, if we only have about 27% of women coming out to work, then you have to raise this participation rate for women. And if you look at our population policy, well, we have often been told that the women participation rate is on the low side, it's less than 50%. So how are we able to provide an incentive for these women to join the labor market? And there are several things which the administration has not been able to address, and you have also adopted a very sloppy approach when it comes to childcare service and also after-school care service. Well, what the Undersecretary has been saying, all right, you had the nerve to say that you've managed to increase the figure from 690 to 730 for standalone childcare centers. All right, if you've been able to do a better job, then the situation would not have been so pitiful. You are only able to increase the number by 40 every year. All right, you're actually discriminating against women. Some of the employers are exploiting them. Now, coming back to the issue of our population policy, all right, if you look at the population policy report, you chanted a lot of slogans saying that you would be boosting women's labor participation rate. But then, what has that been translated into? So is it that you no longer care about that because you're working on the constitutional reform? That's why whatever has been suggested in that report will not be implemented. So I'd like to look at the overall direction. What sincerity does the administration have in encouraging women to go back to the labor market? I cannot see any. So can you tell us, under the population policy, do you have anything new that can promote women rejoining the labor market? On childcare service, well, I'd like to clarify that please do not just focus on aided standalone childcare centers, because as Mr. Fong just said, well, if you look at the number of childcare services, in fact, we have some 28,500 places. So there are also some 25,500 in the private sector, and also there are some 2,200 in the NGOs, and also there are also some occasional care service, and also for the neighborhood support childcare project, and also some community centers. They're also very flexible in providing such services to women, and of course in providing support to the women so that they can go back to the labor market, and also to unleash their labor force. In fact, that's one of our policies. In fact, during our public consultation on our population policy, I think there is a consensus in the community that we should move in that direction. So later on, as you are aware, in a policy address, actually, in this respect as to how we can further step up our efforts, we will be giving you further details. All right, you have the intention, but then how are you going to implement that? All right, we have the direction, but then for the details, we'll announce it in a few days. So in the policy address, there will be further details announced. Next, Wong Yuk-man. Chairman, well, let's take a look at women in poverty in Hong Kong. Mainly, we're talking about middle-aged housewives and single parents. Well, for women born in the 70s and 80s, well, relatively speaking, they've been able to receive better education. That's why many of them are able to work. But then we also have the problem of the working poor. And then in Para 3, you've actually proven that that is the case. But then for middle-aged housewives are trying to rejoin the labor market. All right, in the past, they used to take care of their families and take care of their kids. And when they are now able to go back to the labor market, well, they have left for a while. And that's why when they go back, they can only become cleansers, security guards, and even catering, workers in the catering establishments and so on.
So they can only be involved in relatively low-income jobs. And in paragraph 8, the Labour Department has certain job centers and recruitment centers. But in terms of support for single mothers, of course, if the government provides adequate support to these mothers, you can solve the issue of intergenerational poverty. Long working hours and low income, under these conditions, these single mothers are not able to take care of their children. When we look at our education and social welfare system, we are unable to help these disadvantaged families or individuals. My office has been visiting certain communities and conducting questionnaires. We were trying to help single mothers and their children. A lot of the children need homework consultation. They need someone to advise them or to push them to do homework after school. So we organized some tutorial classes. The teachers were not able to deal with the kids. But from the parents' point of view, it was great because the teachers were able to look after their kids. So the only reason why the parents sent their kids there was to have someone to look after their kids. So the problem is, in our current education and social welfare system, we are not able to help the disadvantaged. After the one-off subvention was approved, the situation actually got worse because a lot of social welfare providers lack money to launch services, and this problem has been apparent for a number of years. We have to help these disadvantaged families and women and relieve their burden so that these single mothers can take care of their kids. Everyone knows what the government has to do. But if we look at the government's policy, the education policy and social welfare policy must go hand in hand. Women and poverty is one issue, intergenerational poverty is another. We talked about the long-term care services for the elderly and health care for the elderly. We don't have enough healthcare centers. So we are very clear. This is especially apparent in Sham Shui Po. This is something very important for them. So the issue of the working poor is very serious, and the median income has been below par for a long time. The government has a lot of policies, but yet none of them are effective, and we are looking at an inefficient allocation of resources. Under Secretary, please. In brief, I agree with Mr. Wong. So that's why we will continue to step up our childcare and after-school care services. We will also enhance training and retraining for women in order to allow them to re-enter the labor market. And at the Labor Department and the employees retraining boards, we are also going to do some work. And under LIFA, we are trying to help these families, and the number of working hours required are relatively low at 144 and 192 hours respectively, and for single parents, they only have to work 36 to 72 hours. So in parts, this would help unleash the labor force. This morning, the matching fund aims to encourage children to save up, but this is a joke because these children have no money to save. You are saying that they should build up, they should build a habit of saving up. Raymond Wong talked about the one-off allocation for social service providers, and they are not able to keep up, and as such, a lot of them have closed. And in the past, nobody cared about women in poverty, and some people felt that women only had to find the right husband and everything would be solved. You are stepping up services, and at the same time, you don't have enough money, and you are just doing bits and pieces. So this is actually, I think this is actually a plot by C.Y. Leung. He's trying to set up funds, and he's trying to delay things and by setting up funds, and he's expecting the funds to solve every problem. And the government is only would only do something if there are complaints. We have a lot of Filipino domestic helpers. They come all the way to Hong Kong for a living. But when we look at women in Hong Kong, we don't have enough childcare and after-school care services, and if we can find someone to take care of their kids, then these women can re-enter the labor market. And these so-called social, these child carers, home-based child carers, they charge $19 an hour, which is very expensive for the women, and as such, they cannot afford to work. We actually have a lot of jobs available for women. For example, child carers, jobs at child care centers and after-school care centers. But yes, the government is not doing anything, and as such, we have a lot of poor women. If you have satisfactory welfare measures, if you allow these child care centers to hire more people, then the problem might be solved. Can you allow the government some time to respond? John Cheng talked about a 22 million fund for the future. If you allocate 10 million for daycare and after-school care services, then you are able to release a lot of women to the employment market, and everyone can benefit, and all the problems can be eased. And the pilot scheme or funds actually did nothing to help. It doesn't solve the problem. And we've been talking about doing something for ages, and as such, maybe a few years later, we won't see CY Leung anymore. This is a structural problem of the political system. We are looking at women in poverty because the government is not doing anything. You are not allowing them to work, so the poverty can never be lifted. I'll be brief. We would convert some of the expenditure into recurrent expenses. We have 3 billion in recurrent expenditure every year, and 170,000 children can benefit every year under LIFA. And the percentage of working women is 27%, while for men it's 58%. And the income for women is also lower. So is the government going to study the factors behind these figures? And if women are able to work, their conditions might be very different. We are looking at a difference of more than 20% between the participation rates for men and women. Is it because women have to take care of their children? And are you going to help more women become employed? And in terms of income, the discrepancy is at $2,700. And why is that? Are all the low-income jobs taken up by women? A lot of women are tertiary educated. Some of them study in tertiary institutes in Hong Kong or in China. So is there something the government can do, can help these women so that they can do better jobs and earn better incomes? And my second point is the statistics for women in poverty seem to have improved a bit, and I think this is because of the OALA. I think that because more women are receiving the allowance, you shouldn't mix up women under 65 and women above 65. Otherwise, these figures might be misleading. My third point is that the COP conducted a study on children, but you have not shared any statistics on children, persons with disabilities, and elderly. So I think you are being very selective. You are only highlighting certain strands of people under poverty and ignoring others. And for women under poverty, we have done some analysis on the factors on two fronts. First, in the past, elderly women were relatively lesser educated, and for the younger generation, most of them are better educated. And the lack of education attainment meant that they had to take up low-skilled jobs. And the second reason is that the percentage of women who choose to be home carers is inevitably higher than that of men. And hence we are looking at these statistics. So through training and retraining, we are hoping to enhance their skills and work capacity in order to improve the situation. And for LIFA, in many cases, the women had children. I'm sure you understand that we had to tackle women with children. For elderly people and persons with disabilities, we have other support services and programs, for example, the fruit money and other kinds of subsidies. And for LIFA, we are targeting families with children. So any questions for the first or second round? If not, to wrap up, in order to increase income among women and lift their poverty, we must have legislative measures in place, and we should increase the number of service places. Please let me complete.
Yeah.
So for childcare service and also after school care service and also training and retraining, all these have to be beefed up. At present, you have not done enough in all these areas, so we have to be more focused in helping the women. Can you ban the importation of foreign domestic helpers? Because if that is the case, then you'll be able to help more women to get home help jobs or become helpers. Well, for foreign domestic helpers policy, number one, we have to protect local workers so that their jobs will not be threatened. So only where there is a genuine need will we be importing foreign domestic helpers, because we have hundreds of thousands of foreign domestic helpers. They are getting very low wages. So they're actually taking over or taking up the jobs which should have been taken up by local women. So if they are no longer allowed into Hong Kong, then more people will be forced to hire local women who will then get higher wages. Well, this is a very complicated issue that would involve the affordability of some families and so on. So it's not something that we'll be able to sort out in a very short time, and we have to be very careful about the possible social impact. Anybody who would like to ask in the first or second round? Chairman, I'd just like to respond to what Mr. Lam Kwok Hong just said. If we were to do away or scrap the FDH policy so that these jobs can be taken up by local women, obviously the wage level will be higher than the present level, and the counter effect would be that fewer people or fewer women will be able to come out to work. That might not be something that you'd like to see. All right, if there aren't any new questions, then I'd like to thank the Undersecretary and his team. So just now we've been talking about measures that can help the women who have to take care of their kids so that they can come out to work. So that's a very important point. Please do consider that. Next item, ways to enhance the employment opportunity of people in poverty by promoting support for community economy. So can we invite the government team to join us?
咁我都話俾大家聽咧，就係今日有啲
Some groups have written in, and they have been distributed to members. So you may wish to refer to them and then ask questions later. All right. Welcome to government officials. We have received the paper from the administration, so we'll give you 5 minutes to walk us through the paper. So please summarize the paper to us. Thank you, Chairman, for giving us the opportunity to report to members on several issues. And in the letter given to us, you mentioned that you would be interested in 3 areas. Number 1 is about bazaar and also hawker policy. Second is about social enterprises. And third is about the Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship Development Fund, the SIE Fund. So I'll be talking about the issue of bazaars and hawker policy, and then my colleague will talk about social enterprises, and then the efficiency unit will talk about the SIE Fund. Well, at the Food and Health panel, there was a subcommittee on hawker policy, and then in March 2014, when it was first set up, the progress has been very well since then, and we have talked to members about government's hawker management and control work, and then we expect that in the middle of 2015 we should be able to complete that review. And in the course of a discussion with members, I'll be briefing you on the progress. If everything goes smoothly, we hope that during the Chinese New Year we'll be able to submit a report, and then afterwards we'll be listening to the deputation's comments, and then eventually we hope to be able to submit that report. But then before I talk about the progress that has been made so far, let me go back a bit on history and also the present policy. As you all understand, well, during the former municipal council's era, we introduced this hawker policy. If you look at the number of hawker licenses in the past, there used to be many, and now we only have about 6,400 something. And when members asked the bureau director whether or not there was any policy to replace or to phase out existing hawker licenses, well, he said that he didn't have any plan. But then over the years, our policy has been that we would like to properly manage and control licensed hawkers' hawking activities, and then for illegal hawking activities, we will take enforcement action against them. And between them, i.e., on the one hand, we do manage and control licensed hawker activities by maintaining proper hygiene and control of the use of location and so on. But then on the other, we would also reduce illegal or phase out illegal hawking activities. There are several principles. Number 1, food safety, environmental hygiene, reduction of nuisances caused by these hawkers and so on. So we have to emphasize that when we talk to members concerning members' suggestion on the long term, which are forward-looking and sustainable policies, well, there is a lot of room for discussion as to what can be done in order to narrow the gap between the administration and members. We do understand that for street hawking activities, that would provide job opportunities, and at the same time, members of the public will be able to procure or buy cheaper goods. And at the same time, there are voices in the community asking us to revitalize and maintain such traditional bazaars which have their own characteristics. But then we have also got to consider the following. Number 1, we have to adopt a diversified approach. Well, issuing licenses might be one thing, but then as members would understand, very often we have to do this through a proponent, so that within their venues or premises, they would be able to do what members might suggest. For example, in parks and so on, they've been organizing bazaars, and some local groups, for example, in the past in Wong Tai Sin and Cheng Yi, they've also launched some short-term bazaars. And in some cases, some NGOs have also done this in Tin Shui Wai. They've also run some bazaars there. So as to the mode of operation, I think we can explore that. Another highlight is that, well, for all these plans, we have to adopt a bottom-up approach. By that we mean that it should be promoted or proposed by the local organizations, and that would also have to tie in with the needs of the local community, and it has to be supported by the district council, and there should be a consensus in that community, and then the administration will be more than happy to help them. For example, taking bazaars as an example, our stance is that we will adopt an open and positive attitude in looking at plans proposed by individual groups. So please allow me to finish. So that if the proponent has identified appropriate premises, and if it's supported by the district council, and if it's in line with environmental hygiene, and if it's not causing any nuisance, then we'll be more than happy to help. But then some also ask what kind of policy is in place to help them. In fact, we have got some foundation for that, and on that basis we can do a bit more. So that is something that we can explore, but then of course we do not rule the possibility that there might be new initiatives that can be subject to further discussion. As members might recall, in March 2013 we got some funding from the FC. We got $230 million, and we would be running a 5-year program, so that for some 43 hawker areas, if there is any application, then we can provide some financial incentive to help them to relocate them or to rebuild their pitches in situ, and through some improvement works we'll be able to reduce the fire risk to these stores. As members might be interested, alright, we've been running that for a year or so. What is the progress? In fact, some 498 stores were involved, but then that has nothing to do with this. You will have to go back to the FEH panel to brief them, because members would like to know if we would be prepared to issue more licenses. We have told them that well, only after there has been some progress made, then some pitches might be left vacant, and of course that would also depend on the operating environment, and also the actual circumstances, and also the district council's views and the residents' views, and then we can consider whether or not those stores can be released for new licenses to be issued. All in all, we have an open mind on this, and we are of the view that if we are able to continue to make use of the subcommittee's platform so that we can have a more comprehensive discussion, we'll be happy to listen to members' views, so that when we go to the platform, we'll be able to consider all those views. And if members permit, then I can also defer my other colleagues to brief you. You will have to be very brief because you have already overrun on your time. So can you ask your colleagues to be more brief and concise? Yes, Mrs. Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I'll be very brief in telling you about the development of our history. Alright, we're responsible in promoting the development of social enterprises. Basically, we work on 4 areas. Number 1, we directly offer seed money to the social enterprises to help them to set up, and if they have any operational difficulties, they can also apply for funding support. So that's a direct subsidy to the social enterprises. And then my assistant director will be giving you more details about these programs, and members might be very familiar with them. And secondly, we have to ensure that when SEs develop, they can pose or they can provide a more positive impact. So we do have a training program, and we have also launched this tertiary institutions students so that they can also set up social enterprises. So the second part is about training, so that for the young budding entrepreneurs, they can be encouraged to join the social enterprises so that we can set up new social enterprises. And thirdly, very often we would be working with institutions or organizations supporting these social enterprises, and very often they would be very positive and proactive, and then we'll be looking into different projects, and we have also supported them on different programs, including one which has been up and running for several years. That is the Social Enterprises Summit that was led by some social community organizations, and the HAD has offered support, and we've also been involved in the organization. And for the community promotion programs of the Social Enterprise Summit, the SWD has taken a leading role in the last few years, and we have exchanged a lot of experience. And in the paper, we also talk about these summit, and the organizations have also taken up the issue with them, and they've got some new initiatives. That's why in the SE Summit 2014, they've actually run a pilot program in 3 districts, and they'd like to enhance social district-based resources, and they would also enhance their coordination with different organizations in the district. Other than organizing some district-based forums in these 3 districts, we have also come up with a good map so that enterprises in that in those districts would be promoted, and according to the organizer, they would also be interested in organizing similar forums and distributing similar good maps in those 15 districts. So we do emphasize cross-sectoral coordination and cooperation, and we would also like to enhance the public's understanding about social enterprises. And on that, other than stepping up publicity in the media, we have also help in organizing TDC talks and so on. And in November last year, through the Chinese U, we have managed to release a new report on social enterprises, and the figures have been very encouraging. In the past 6 years, the number has increased from 220 to some 450 now. So that went up from 220 to 450. So what's the figure in the past? It went up from 220 to 450 in 6 years. So that's very encouraging. And also for members of the public's understanding about social enterprises from 2009, in a similar survey, the awareness went up from 60% to some 80%, and in a similar study done by the Chinese U, some 70% of the respondents said that in the next 12 months they would be interested in patronizing these social enterprises or buying their products. So through different channels like the District Council and also the Legislative Council, social enterprises have been developing steadily, and we would continue to promote them, and we would be taking on board members' views. And I'll defer to Mr. Hui. He would tell you more about the partnership program. You will have to be very brief. Well, basically, the Financial Secretary in 2006 and 2011, on 2 occasions, every time, he managed to set aside some $150 million for the HAD to launch this Enhancing Self-Reliance through District Partnership Program. So we provide seed money to social enterprises in order to create jobs for the disadvantaged, so that through actual work experience, they'd be able to enhance their employability and self-esteem, so that they would find it easier to integrate into society.
So far, through the ESR program, over 160 SEs have been established, and as my teammate said, we have over 400 SEs in Hong Kong, so around 30%, more than 30% were set up through the ESR program. And it covers a wide spectrum of businesses, including catering, retail, domestic services, arts, performances, horticulture, ecotourism, etc. And the different socially disadvantaged groups were involved, including women and young people. And in the past years, the number of people benefiting have reached over 3,800. And according to our surveys, nearly 80% were socially disadvantaged people. And besides, about 80% of the employees thought that these jobs had allowed them to learn more working skills and strengthen their confidence in future employment. Thank you very much. Finally, Ms. Leung, anything to add? Chairman, members, with regards to the SIE fund, this fund was established with a 500 million allocation from the Lotteries Fund, and through cross-sectoral collaboration and innovation, we are hoping to encourage social innovation to solve the problems of poverty and isolation in Hong Kong. And under the COP, a task force for SIE fund has been established. And in 2014, the task force launched an open invitation for applications from interested organizations to become the first batch of intermediaries, and they would be tasked to design, administer, and promote programs, namely capacity building and innovative programs. The task force has completed some assessment of the proposals, and in December 2014, a list of four intermediaries have been announced, and it's expected that the SIE funds programs will be rolled out in early 2015. And in terms of local community economy, when the fund actually welcomes all institutions and individuals to submit proposals as long as they have innovative proposals to help the disadvantaged people of Hong Kong. Everyone can make applications to the fund, and these can be community-based or based on support to the local economy. Thank you very much. Raymond Wong, Tenka Pugh, Fernando Chang, Lee Chuk Yen, and myself. 4 minutes each, please. Chairman, I always wonder what the point of having such meetings is. And the answer is rather negative. Chairman, we've been in this meeting or this subcommittee for a long, long time, and every time we keep hearing the same things. And the Social Welfare Department has not been telling us anything useful, and they are repeating themselves time and again, and they are the perfect lecture in meaningless gibberish. And with regards to open bazaars, they are saying that the government is open, and that they are positive and open. And they have actually improved, because at the beginning they said they were open, and now they said they were open and positive. So they've actually improved. So we are here every time hearing the same things from the officials, and we are really angry because we've been hearing the same thing for a long, long time. And one example is telecom promotion materials. They promised to legislate a long time ago, and yet nothing has been done. So what's the point of having such meetings at this subcommittee? And the only new thing I've heard is the final item on the SIE fund, but there's only a few lines in the paper. All I know is that there would be 500 million spent, but yet there are no details. I don't think we will see open bazaars in Hong Kong in the future. And the Principal Assistant Secretary talked about the hawker policy and what to do with the licenses, etc. We've heard these things a lot of times, and this has nothing to do with poverty alleviation. And they are saying that they are positive and open with regards to bazaars. But where's the plan? You have no plans and no policy. Do you have plans? Do you have any concrete plans? No, nothing. So you're just wasting our time. Can you learn from Chat-to-Chat market in Bangkok or the night markets in Taiwan? Never. This will never happen. You are just, all you're saying is food safety and environmental hygiene. You said you are going to balance these things, but how? So the government's attitude is that they are here just for the sake of it. And Dr. Koh said there would be a brainstorming session, but then that's all it is. We won't have any results. So please allow me to finish. In paragraph 5 about bazaars, the government said they would enable bazaars to develop and thrive in an organic manner. So this is all empty talk. Do you have any concrete policies to back up what you said? You're saying that you would maintain food safety and a clean and hygienic living environment, and you said it must be supported by DCs. So these are just excuses. Please stop wasting our time. Just tell us whether or not you are going to do something. Over the course of discussions, members agree that hawker activities would create employment opportunities. I understand that members have read our papers, and in paragraph 12, apart from adopting an open stance, we have reviewed the hawker policy with the subcommittee, and the discussions will continue. And in the coming months, hopefully, we will see some results. Chairman, well, the hawker policy you're talking about might conflict with the enhancement of the local district economy. So this is obvious. Every bazaar will be associated with such problems, such as noise. Mr. Tenkapiu. Thank you, Chairman. Raymond Wong mentioned a very important question. Do you have any concrete plans? There has been no improvement in the community after you launched the fund. The Tongchong, the outlying islands district council has mentioned the issues at Tin Sao Hui a lot of times, and we have asked a lot of questions, but we haven't got any answers. Thank you very much for the comments. In the past, we have exchanged some letters with Mr. Tang, and for the issue in Tongchong, we have paid visits to the area. We have visited the markets, and we looked at the operating environments at Tongchong. And throughout our exchanges, we have stressed that we are going to adopt a positive and open attitude. The problem is you are not going to do something proactively to allow open bazaars to operate. So are you saying that you would wait until you see a lot of illegal hawkers in Tongchong before you allow bazaars? So if you are waiting for applications, then it's meaningless. We will relay your views to the district council and see what we can do. If no one is submitting proposals, then there's nothing we can follow up. The situation is we have a lot of hawkers in every district in Hong Kong. That's the reality of Hong Kong. If you are asking very big NGOs or charities to undertake the entire bazaar, this is not pragmatic. You cannot. They cannot possibly survive in an organic manner because you are killing them. In some areas like Wong Tai Sin or Ching Yi or Tin Shui Wai, we have successful cases. But everyone understands that this is a problem which can be solved overnight. And we'll continue to communicate with members. Well, why don't we do this? We can arrange visits with operators in Tongchong. Of course, they cannot. They are not under any big NGO groups like Tonghua groups of hospitals, and this is impossible. So I think you're not being realistic. In the past, our bureau and our departments have considered this point, and if you have such, we will relay your view. And I also have a question with environmental hygiene. If I produce some food at home, and am I able to sell them at the markets? Is this allowed under the law? What's your view on this? Last time we talked about it. together with the members. Can you allow me time to finish, please? If operators sell cooked food, they can apply for a temporary food factory license, and they are only allowed to reheat their food. They are not allowed to cook their food, and they cannot cause any obstructions to the passageways. And under these circumstances, we would consider the application. But for the scenario you mentioned, generally it's not acceptable. Thank you very much. According to the food trade regulations, any operator selling manufactured food must obtain the relevant food factory license, and the objective in doing so is to ensure food safety, because food manufactured at home might not be safe and clean enough. Mr. Tam Yu-chung, I think it's difficult to identify sites for open bazaars. Recently, I was at the cruise terminal. We don't have a lot of cruises every day. There are some restaurants already. We have shops already. But we still have a lot of space. For example, at the customs terminals, can we make better use of that space? For example, can we use these spaces during public holidays and weekends and allow social enterprises to operate at these areas? I understand that the cruise terminal is under control of one company, but it says, can the government negotiate with the company to allow business in that area? I think we have tourists. We will have some tourists at that area, although the terminal is not very accessible at the moment. We have to provide more shuttle buses and enhance the linkage. But this is something we can consider, and this would be a viable solution.
What we are short of most is places. So we don't have enough space for that. Well, we are not asking you to provide the sites for that, but then you can make better use of that area so that we can try out more of these. Yes, thank you. We are grateful to Mr. Tam for his suggestion. At the subcommittee, both the administration and the members have been talking about this, and our tourism commissioner has been heavily involved. And at our internal meetings, in fact, government departments have also been looking at different locations, and suggestions have been made. But then we also have to meet different criteria. For example, in Central East Kowloon, well, we have actually done some site search. But then, after listening to your comments, I'll take it back and discuss that with the Tourism Commissioner. Yes, Mr. Lang Kwok Hong. Chairman. Well, I can see this senior official, Ms. Diane Wong. In fact, I sympathize with her because she's been working very hard on columbariums, and she was here to help us with this, and now we're trying to increase jobs for the poor. So the two have nothing to do with each other, and she has been having a very hard time when she worked on columbarium because it's a matter for the dead, and now we are talking about living people, and we're trying to help them, and yet she is responsible for both. All right, Mr. Raymond Wong asked you what you got from those meetings. So here I'm holding this surgical knife, but then we're not trying to sever or to amputate the cancer cell from the patient, but then it's almost like an autopsy, and for social enterprises it's doomed. Because the concept was wrong. Because for social enterprises, you're trying to make use of some money, and then you try to ask the NGOs to run some business so that they can create jobs for people. But then it's something with a life. So it has to be sustainable. It has to become self-reliant. But then you're actually giving that as an endowment to the NGOs, and so long as they are willing to do it, they'll be able to employ people. So it's like these open bazaars. All right, Mr. Tam Yu-chung is not here. I think he's crazy because, well, I can give you an example. In the past, have you been to the poor man's nightclub? All right, it used to be a government building because there were some cottages which were used by the Marine Department, and salesmen or seamen used to go there to apply for a license and so on. And people also went there to apply for a home return permit. That's why it was a bus terminus. That's why it worked as a poor man's nightclub. But then what Mr. Tam is suggesting is to have a piece of a new reclamation, and then you ask people to go there. Of course, Mr. Tam made a suggestion out of good intention, but then it simply won't work. So the purpose is to set up a bazaar, and then once this bazaar is up and running, it will have to look nice. It has to look grand. It's a waste of time. It won't work because when you want to set up bazaars, they have to be popular amongst the locals. So I think when you're working on the columbariums, you already had a very hard time, and now you're working on this. You're coming again to tell us how you're going to work on the bazaar. How much time do you have? So however involved you are, however dedicated you are, you simply won't be able to do everything. So I think you're just trying to tell us that you're working on it, and yet you simply won't have enough time to work on it. I think you're giving the civil servants a very hard time. So when we hold the surgical knife, we try to do an operation on the living patient rather than the dead. Well, I'll try my best, because you will have to ensure that those bazaars that are up and running will have to survive. So you're not from the FEH, or you're not from the FH Bureau, because last year, well, from the first to the third day of the Chinese New Year, well, people did not want to leave, and that's why there were fightings and resistance. And yet you didn't allow them to continue to run the bazaar. So you cannot expect social enterprises to do the job, because bazaars have to be popular amongst the locals. Well, I'll ask my colleague to answer the question later, but then Mr. Leung was also concerned about the enforcement policy, in fact taking into account the fact that in year 2000, after the FEHD was set up, taking into account the prevailing economy and also the employment policy, we tried to adopt a more lenient approach when it comes to law enforcement. For licensed hawkers, if they are selling dry goods, if they are causing obstruction to the streets, and if they are attracting complaints, then we will issue warnings first before taking enforcement action against them. But then, as the member just said, if it involves food because of food safety, and if the hawking activity involves the sale of prohibited items and so on, then we have no choice, we have no alternative, and therefore the hawker control team will have to take enforcement action right away, because food safety is a very important consideration. And then I'll defer to Mr. Hui from the HAD to tell you more about our social enterprise policy. In fact, social enterprises are very vibrant, and they have a lot of vitality. In fact, as I just referred to the Chinese youth study, in recent years there are more social enterprises which do not have a social welfare background, and we attach a lot of importance to that. That's why we've been emphasizing that we have to have a cross-sectoral collaboration. We also have to train up the young people so that they can set up social enterprises as good projects, because we want the social enterprises to be more diversified. In fact, other than welfare agencies, we also want to have more young people and retirees to start up new enterprises, and we hope that with that value in mind, that would be more forceful. In fact, in 6 years, you managed to increase the number from 220 to 450. 4 years ago, we visited South Korea. They started later than that in Hong Kong, and then within a year or so, they managed to set up 1,000, and then in 5 years' time, they hope to be able to have 10,000. Thank you. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen, all right, you talk about social enterprises. In fact, they can be very big institutions or enterprises, but then anything under the sun can become social enterprises. I don't want to comment on that because social enterprises can cover a lot of things. But then what we are interested in today would be bazaars and also hawker stores and so on, because you talk about the can-do spirit in Hong Kong. In fact, we have a whole generation which have been brought up by these bazaars and so on. In the past, we used to have a lot of space, and we have this hawker economy, and we have local bazaars and so on. But then these days, we only have very hard and rigid things. We no longer have many bazaars. And what is the government policy on this? And after what we have heard from the administration, there is no policy at all. And you're actually tightening up the policy. And of course, the administration would not admit to that. But then you talk about having a bottom-up approach. You are not allowing things to develop naturally. You will have to look at the sentiments in the local community, and you will have to subject that to a lot of constraints and restrictions. Well, in the past, we tried to set up this early morning bazaar. We thought that it would work, but then after a while, nothing came about, and then we tried to set up this new bazaar, but then it's a far cry from the earlier idea. All right, by setting up this new bazaar, the old bazaar couldn't survive, and then after a while, for the Tin Shao Bazaar, it also did not work out well, and we wanted that to become a wet market, but then nobody was selling any wet market items there. And then at the early morning bazaar, you did not allow them to continue as a legal operation. So the administration has offered no incentive whatsoever. You have not offered any assistance to the operators. You don't have a policy at all. You're just trying to suppress them. Another thing which was raised earlier on, all right, if you have some home cooking and if you want to sell them, is that okay? No, that's not allowed because you will have to get a license. But then how can you expect people to get a license when they are just preparing food at home? And then if you look at the information provided by some deputations, all right, in the US, they have the California Homemade Food Act. So can the administration look into it? Look into this? Can you make reference to this Californian law so that for the grassroots and also for locally produced food items which have low risk, can you allow that? If that is okay, then that would give people more room to sell homemade food, because the administration doesn't seem to have encourage this room for local production and local homemade food so that we can have bazaar economy. So there is simply no room at all. So can you tell us what your policy is, Ms. Wong? Thank you, Chairman. Just now we talk about Tin Kwong Bazaar. As I've already given a reply on that, I'm not going to repeat that. On the overseas legislation, you also referred to the California Homemade Food Act. Actually, we'll be more than happy to go back and take a look, because at the subcommittee, whether it's the administration or the subcommittee secretariat, in fact, we have both looked at our overseas experience and we have obtained a lot of information. So we'll go back to see if we can find out more, and then we can take it up at the subcommittee. Just now, allow me to supplement on the temporary food factory license or provisional food factory license. All right, if it's less than 7 days, it's okay. But then if it's more than 7 days, so long as they do not reheat it there, because they are not supposed to cook the food there, and they are just reheating it there, because it's not prepared in situ. Still, they can apply for a license to do it. So that's all I'd like to say for the time being. Okay, Fernando Cheung, Lang Yu Chong, Chen Yun Han, and then myself. Yes, Fernando Cheung. Thank you, Chairman. For bazaars and also community economy, including social enterprises, the subject is very broad. But then it's all about creating the room for the grassroots to make their living. in the past that did not have that there weren't that many restrictions. So it's like what Mr. Leung Kwok Hong just said. So long as people gather together in a place, they'll be able to start a bazaar. So if they are able to run or start some business there, well, they'll be able to survive. And now there are so many restrictions and there is no space or no place at all. So how can they do it? And even for social enterprises, more often than not, they are run by welfare agencies or NGOs. And then for the genuinely local residents, they simply won't be able to have a hand in it. And the Commission on Poverty should have paid more attention to this. Well, during the last term, all right, Chairman, you used to be a member of the COP in the last term, and at the time, they also had a special committee or special working group on local community economy. But then during the new term, they no longer have this subcommittee. So I suggest that at this term of the COP, set up by the administration, you should again set up this local community economy group so that you can work on a district-based approach for the more remote and more impoverished or impoverished districts. There might be some new ideas. So if you can work with that subcommittee under the COP, I hope that something new can be suggested so that more space and room can be created. As to whether or not it will work out, we don't know. But then at least we can give the administration one more chance so that the COP can do something about it. So at least this platform is created so that we can have more chances to discuss that. And I hope that something new can come about it or can come out from it. Well, I cannot speak on behalf of the COP because I'm from the FHB, but then for the suggestion that you just made, we can forward that or convey that to the CSO. In fact, this subject was discussed last year, and similarly, many departments were represented here, and we also complained that given the fact that we're discussing poverty issues, the COP should be represented. At least they can take on board our views. But then on this occasion, again, they are not represented here. Mr. Leung Yu-chung.
When I look at the paper, the government has a policy on bazaar, and since 2003, we have been talking about bazaars. Excuse me. Let's look at Mr. Fernando Chang's motion at the end of the questions. And more than 10 years have passed, and yet we have not achieved much. I'm not sure whether you have identified any problems. And a lot of teammates thought this paper is rather meaningless. You said you are going to give or allow flexibility, but you haven't mentioned specifically what to do. And a lot of organizations want to run bazaars. And I've had meetings with the Alliance for Grassroots, and they want to organize bazaars on Sundays, but they are facing a lot of limitations and restrictions. They have to apply to the FEHD, the Lands Department, the Fire Services Department. They have to make numerous applications, and at the end, well, probably they are not able to. They won't be able to open bazaars. If they are just selling dry foods, can you streamline the application process? Just like carnivals, in order to encourage applications for bazaars. And usually, only senior government officials are able to approve applications, while officials at the districts can do nothing at all. So we are creating a lot of barriers for these applicants. So can we regularize or streamline the application process? So can we simplify the procedures? Ms. Wang, please. And during the course of our discussions with the subcommittee, we understand that applicants may face difficulties during the applications. So district council is one barrier, and they have to follow various rules and regulations set by different departments. So we would do our best to help. Well, that said, can we have bazaars everywhere? The answer is probably no. Some members mentioned that during certain festivals, some institutions have successfully organized bazaars. And if they are to sell cooked food, they can apply for temporary food factory licenses. So this is not beyond their reach. But we do understand the members' frustrations that there are a lot of technical constraints. So going forward, we will try to find ways to ease these restrictions. I think we only have to find a place, for example, a football pitch, and they can organize a bazaars. Can they, in that case, can they, do they still have to apply for, apply to district councils? These bazaars are held only on weekends and holidays. This is not something they do every day. When you look at Hong Kong Park, Kowloon Park, etc., they would sometimes apply to the LCSD to put up kiosks. And they've had some festivals before. Ms. Chen Yunhan, I'm really angered by what I've heard today. We've had a lot of these cases in Hong Kong. Bazaars like Teng Long Hui has been very successful. The problem is whether the government is willing to do something. I don't want to say the government is rubbish, but this is rather meaningless, so to speak. We have a representative from the efficiency unit here today. So I think Mr. Fernando Cheng should not talk about the CSO anymore. We are talking about the community economy. And the real culprit is the Food and Health Bureau. I've not been able to get in touch with Dr. Ko. I want to take him to many, many places. So the real culprits for bazaars is the government. And they are saying that these bazaars don't fulfill the requirements, and they kill them all. I visited China, Taiwan, South Korea. They have ample experience, and I've also shared my experience with the administration. But my feeling is that some people accuse the AOs or administrative officers, and I don't think this is the fault of AOs. It's the fault of the entire government. Why do we still have 500 or 600 people in poverty or working poverty? The government is always doing bits and pieces, and I think we should have a proper meeting with the FHB, and we should sit down with people with the right experience. And the government has not solved the long-term problem of employment difficulties for the grassroots families in Hong Kong. I think we should stop talking about the Commission on Poverty under the CSO. The government shouldn't just give us empty talk. We have to deal with the overall strategy or policy if we are to do something. I submitted a motion debate on street economy. We have numerous examples in other countries and cities. We must have a concrete hawker policy. The situation now is ridiculous. The government is not able to do anything because they have not listened to the views of those in the community. So I've been really angered by what I've heard today. I think the administration should hear the views of the community in a humble manner. And you only have to look at the case of Tang Long Hui. It was very successful. And there is a lot of experience on the community level. So I think submitting more motions is rather meaningless. I think the chief executive, the chief secretaries should set up more task forces, and they should stop giving us empty talk. So for those in the know, what the government said is rather meaningless. I don't really need an answer from them. So let's look at Mr. Fernando Cheng's motion. Let's extend the minutes by 15 minutes to 6:45. So it's my turn now for to ask a question. We should separate bazaar policy and hawker policy. Bazaars are not to do with individual business operators. We can have a vibrant bazaar scene in Hong Kong. Bazaars are very different from hawkers. Generally speaking, bazaars refer to markets which are busy only at specific times. From my experience in Sham Shui Po or Kowloon West, in Sham Shui Po we have two bazaars. One is called Tin Kwang Hui and one Tin Hak Hui. And these two shops are both unregulated, and they are very conveniently located near Pei Ho Market, and we have hundreds of operators. So we've seen prosecutions and at these markets, and we've sought help from members and lawmakers. We've tried to help these operators, and we have solved the problems smoothly, and they have festivals every few years. This is something we can persist in the future. We are looking at 700 or 800 operators at these two markets, and these two markets operate at different hours. Tin Kwang Hui in the morning and Tin Hak Hui at night time. And I agree with Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, and I don't agree with Tam Yu Chung. We don't have to vitalize these markets, so to speak. We just have to ensure that people can buy cheap goods in a convenient manner, and at the same time allowing business operators to make some profit. I think it's not up to us to identify which sites are better. The Tin Kwang Hui and Tin Hak Hui have been in operation for 10 or 20 years, so I hope you won't kill them overnight. You talked about Kowloon Park and other parks. I think we can line up some NGOs to come up to run festivals during weekends and holidays. We can mobilize district NGOs to set up store here at these parks. We can, for instance, we can designate a specific amount of space for each NGO, and they can come during weekends and public holidays. So this is another kind of bazaar in effect. So bazaars are very different from hawker policies. You don't have to grant licenses and so on. But I think the only obstacle would be the handling of cash, because LCSD doesn't allow any cash transactions in its premises. So can we overcome this problem with another manner? For example, can we sell tickets? But if you agree, this is something we can consider. for the Shemshui-Po markets, of course, the pro-establishment camp basically agrees with what we said, and a sum of money has been set aside for a study by the HKCSS, and we can identify the challenges and problems, and hopefully we can also see some suggestions under the report. But of course, even if we obtain approval from the DCs, it doesn't mean we can have such markets. We still need people to actually do it. So obtaining approval from the DCs is not enough by itself. I haven't heard any voices against these bazaars from the district council so far. So can you give us a simple answer? Thank you, Chairman. In our papers, we have outlined very clearly that bazaar policy and hawker policy are two entirely different things. For hawker policy, the subcommittee is constantly studying the viability, and as the chairman said, the support from district councils is very important. But even after we obtain their support, we have to relax various government policies in order to allow bazaars to thrive. So this is something the subcommittee will continue to consider. If we have updates in the future, we'll certainly share with members. We still have some time left, so I'd like to make a follow-up. Yes, perhaps we can talk about your motion first. Do we have any revisions to the motion? She said the CS hopes to set up a focus group. So if the group is headed by the CS again, well, it will probably go under the Commission on Poverty. That's my guess. So what Ms. Chen Yunhan said is that it should be an independent focus group. Do you have to amend your motion? I think the most pragmatic solution is to leave it as is. So we are very accommodating for the government already. I will support. So does anyone disagree? If not, let's pass this motion. So I'd like to make a follow-up with the administration. If we look at the example at Shemshui-Po, will the FEHD or the administration observe the situations at different districts, especially the low-income districts? We don't have to look at districts like Happy Valley or the mid-levels. We have to look at Chunwan, Wan Chai, etc. Can we identify certain busy areas and, for example, pay-ho markets? If we identify such needs, how can we give them a spark?
Because they dare not do it, because once they set up these stores, they could be arrested. So can you set up things like the early morning or late evening bazaar so that they can put up or they can set up stores during those hours, and so long as they do not cause any obstruction, it's okay. But then they do not have to pay a license fee. They do not have to apply for a license. Let me make it clear. I'm just giving you the examples. Please do not try to take enforcement action against them. So can you try to do it? And the second example is, as Ms. Wong just said, you talk about the parks and set-up areas. Can that be done in a more sustained manner instead of applying that on an ad hoc basis? So if they are allowed to put out stores, all right, if somebody applies to make use of that area, then of course that would not be permitted. So you can leave it to the local NGOs, and then if they are all interested, then they can be made responsible for managing it. So they can apply to you, and then you can allow them to run those bazaars, and then all the NGOs can have a fair chance of running them. So can you just designate the area, and then you can also designate the hours I suspect some NGOs would be interested. So that's the second situation that you can consider. And the third would be on a grander basis. And I'm afraid you may need to have the support from the CSO, because last year we came up with a report, because we went to Japan and Taiwan, and when they try to develop the local community economy, that's another approach. So because during the last term, we had a different batch of officials. All right, in Taiwan, they tried to identify a major temple, which was very popular, and they tried to make use of that as the centerpiece. And then within a radius of 2 kilometers, they tried to develop this local community economy surrounding the major or the big temple. Because without the government support, people would just go there and buy incense and burn them, and then they can sell some souvenirs and also set up food establishments and so on. And as a result, the surrounding areas became very popular. And then in Japan, they could even sell the entire street. And then, of course, the local government would identify a street which is suitable for that, and then whoever is interested can come up with this plan as to how the street can be revitalized, and then they can come up with a plan, and they come up with a budget, and then the central and the local government would share out the cost. So the local government would share part of the cost, and then they can revitalize the entire street. And we managed to went there. We managed to go there, and we can see that the entire street became very vibrant, and they could even organize street performances and so on. And even major performers and artists would be prepared to stage performances there. And what is special about that is that within a radius of 1 kilometer, no chain store and department store would be allowed to go in. Why are they able to do it? If the department stores and chain stores do not come in, then the smaller local stores can develop. So you can consider these experiences. All right. Thank you, Chairman. I'll be more than happy to think about it. And Chairman, can you share the experience with us? Because earlier on, whether it's us or the subcommittee's chairman, the subcommittee secretariat, we have looked at the experience in Thailand, Taiwan, and even the mainland. So we have prepared some papers, and we can exchange that with you. So in the process of discussion, we would be more than happy to make reference to overseas experience. But then we cannot just copy them directly. We also have to look at our own circumstances. But then my brief response to what you said is about bazaars in parks, and we cited some examples. And just now, the comment by the chairman would be brought back to the LCSD for their consideration. Earlier on, the lands department in different districts has looked at the vacant sites in different districts, and we have come up with a checklist for the subcommittee to consider. So in our discussion, we will see how we can make better use of those vacant sites and see if some NGOs might be interested in joining. I understand you refer to the early morning or the late evening bazaars, so we'll try to get hold of more information. Yes, I think the Assistant Director is fully aware of that because I've had meeting with him. But then we also hope that members will understand, given the fact that it is not a very popular area. There are residents and departments which might express concerns about them. And therefore, in the process, we have to take care of the interests of different stakeholders. In the past, our experience is that, all right, we have conducted some case studies, and we have asked how many such unlicensed hawkers would be interested in doing business in different areas. And then we have asked them, if we were to issue licenses, would you be interested in applying? Well, many people actually said that they would be interested. So we cannot just say that this is a very popular district and therefore we can do this. We have to take care of the views of the district councils and different stakeholders. So we'll see what we can do about it. So at the subcommittee on hawker policy, where there is any progress, then we will share that with you. All right. For the other two members, do you have anything to ask? If not, then the next meeting will be held in February, and we'll be discussing the issue of poverty amongst the disabled. And I'd like to thank the officials for coming. So we'll deal with some housekeeping matters. All right. Our next meeting in February will be about poverty amongst the disabled. We hope that we can have about an hour or so for the deputations to share with us the problems encountered by the disabled, and then we can have our own internal discussion afterwards. And during this term, after I've become chairman of the subcommittee on poverty, there was a tacit understanding that for every term we'll do it for 2 years, and then afterwards we can have another election. All right, by next month, if members agree, then we will have another election to elect the chairman and the vice chairman, because our subcommittee is directly under the House Committee, and I should be able to continue as chairman for the remaining years of this term. But then I think it's better for someone else to have a chance to become chairman and deputy chairman. That's why we will have to have another election later. So this will be the last time when I'll be chairing the meeting, and so I'd just like to inform you about this. Thank you.